Ron Howard still can't shake what Harrison Ford and Paul Le Mat did to him in 1973. Critics accuse them of Opie-shaming for attacking his vehicle with bottles and then locking him in a trailer. Still, that was only the start. Howard chose to remain silent on the seedier side of Hollywood for half a century. Everything has been revealed by him now. The near-fatal incidents that occurred on his sets, the multi-million-dollar litigation, his marriage was on the brink of disintegration due to the family's secrets. The beloved American filmmaker opens up about his difficult journey. Duncan, Oklahoma is a little town where Ron Howard came into this world on March 1, 1954. The father, Rance, was pursuing acting and writing as professions. Jean, his mom, was an actress as well. Their budget was tight. Actually, it was quite difficult. However, they uprooted their lives and relocated to Hollywood in 1958, when Ron was just 4 years old. They were performing on a whim, hoping for better acting roles down the road. It was precarious. They couldn't say for sure. They raised their little red-haired boy in a cramped Burbank home, struggling to make ends meet. Their peculiar location near a large studio added to the mystery. Actors, cameras, and movie sets were practically ubiquitous throughout Ron's childhood. He attended an unconventional preschool. Unexpectedly, he was trained on film sets, where he observed everything and gradually integrated into the industry, quietly altering their entire destiny. The massive relocation to California altered more than just their living situation. Ron made his film debut in Frontier Woman on January 1, 1956, at the tender age of 18 months. That wasn't in the cards. For the sake of a brief scene, his father decided to hire Ron as a babysitter. The beginning of something monumental occurred at that brief moment, when a newborn crawled on a stage. The fact that his father had recently left the Air Force compounded their financial woes. Ron even had a live theater performance under his belt by July 15, 1956. However, his parents were determined that he would not be treated like other child stars, even as his appearances increased. Until he was 5, they would not sign any contracts with a long duration. They were about to become bankrupt as a result of their choice. Rance considered giving up acting in 1957 and returning to Oklahoma to farm, because they were so financially strapped. However, they persisted, clinging tenaciously to the belief that they were making the correct choice for their son. One rule was established by Ron's parents in 1954. He couldn't start acting really till he was 5 years old. In 1957 and 1958, they had to turn down substantial offers despite their inability to pay rent. To keep moving on, they were forced to pawn items. They considered quitting Hollywood altogether by year's end 1958, but ultimately decided against it. When Ron turned 5 in 1959, things began to shift. In the same year, he landed a role in the film The Journey. Even if it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, his name finally made it into the credits. His freckles and red hair were the targets of ridicule from his co-workers on set. They treated him like a freak with freckles and called him names. He was devastated. He nearly lost his job when his dad, who was also an employee, got into an altercation with a member of the crew. They were completely devoted to the task, even though the salary was only $2,500. On April 20th of same year, his little brother Clint was born. Budget constraints persisted, although their debt had grown to almost $5,000 in today's money. Ron's parents were adamant about shielding him from harm. He remained a student at a public school. As far as they could, they allowed him to be a child, even if the pressure was mounting. The year 1960 was then a watershed year. On the Andy Griffith Show, Ron played the part of Opie Taylor. 6 years old was his tender age. Casting was a laborious and time-consuming procedure. Among the over 300 children that tried out, Ron's charisma was the deciding factor. Launched on October 3, 1960, the show quickly became popular. In all, there were 249 episodes, with Ron appearing in 243 of them. He got paid $300 every episode to begin with. His earnings each episode reached $1,000 by the time the show concluded in 1968. Plenty of pressure, though, came along with that achievement. Even though he was a little boy, he had to learn his lines by heart, be punctual, and provide an outstanding performance. Every joke and scene had to be delivered precisely on time, because there was no live audience. It was challenging, but he picked it up quickly. Everyone felt welcome and protected by Ron's character, and the show seemed to take place in a bygone era. His audience adored him because of that. Yet unseen by the public, he was maturing rapidly. Andy Griffith, who played the lead role, and Ron grew extremely close. Andy was an integral part of the cast. Like a mentor, he guided her. In the time between takes, He would tell Ron stories and explain the scenes. Their friendship began when Ron was 6 years old and blossomed into something special. Yet serenity wasn't always maintained. Andy had a drinking problem, and Ron would occasionally see him get into heated disputes while filming. Quite terrifying. Andy became embarrassed in front of everyone once after reading an unfavorable review aloud. Regardless, he continued to be kind and helpful to Ron, even throughout the most emotional scenes. Even in 1997, when Andy was much older, he paid a visit to Ron on a Queens film set. They didn't discover they were actually distant cousins until Andy passed away in 2012. Their already exceptional friendship was further enhanced by this surprising and heartwarming revelation. There was a scene on a lake in 1962 where 8-year-old Ron was almost drowned. An incident occurred when they were filming a scenario involving fishing on a small boat. When the boat capsized, Ron was thrown into the water. Without hesitation, Andy Griffith dove in when he saw it happen. He drew Ron aside. The producers chose to remain tight-lipped about it, out of concern for the show's reputation. Ron, though, never forgot it. Safety regulations did not exist in that era. Even while it was customary for children to labor long hours, accidents did happen. Ron was never the same after that near drowning. Years later, when he began directing movies, he instituted strict safety protocols on all sets. The Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968 when Ron was 14 years old. On the contrary, he was turned down for other roles. In 1968 and 1969, more than 50 auditions were unsuccessful. Still, he was known to everyone as Opie. Imprisoned, he felt. Speaking to his parents, he expressed his desire to go. Far from his former salary, he accepted low-paying parts like Gentle Ben in 1969, receiving only $500 per episode. He was leading the Wild Country in 1970 when he lost. It just got worse from there. He began working with the Smiths in 1971 and made $8,000 over the course of 39 episodes. Though it bombed, he masked his fear from others because of all the rejection he felt. Concurrently, he averaged 12 points per game while playing high school basketball. Even though he pretended to be a typical adolescent in 1972, he was really unhappy. Once again, everything altered in 1973. American Graffiti cast Ron when he was 19 years old. George Lucas was the man behind the camera. In June, filming commenced in California. Things were tough behind the scenes, despite how lively everything appeared on the surface. Paul Le Mat and Harrison Ford, two of his co-stars, taunted him. They shouted, "Dance, Opie, dance!" and tossed beer bottles at his vehicle on July 15th. On July 20th, they forced him to skip practices by locking him in a trailer. They even put poison in his water. They treated him differently because of his past as a kid star. Ron chose not to speak. He went on to say that was the only time he had felt shamed for using opiate. He triumphed over all odds and won $10,000. As time passed, Ford issued an apology. However, the agony remained with him. In 1970, while both were still in high school, Ron met Cheryl Alley. Rumors began circulating in December that Cheryl was pregnant after their first date on November 1st. They had barely turned 16. Word spread like wildfire. The school newspaper published Ron's denial in January 1971. It was covered by tabloids in February. As a result, he was unable to secure a $2,000 TV guest part. They remained united despite Cheryl's grief. Ron made 3 separate proposals. In October 1974, she eventually agreed. June 7, 1975 was the date of their wedding. It's been half a century since they were married. Ron frequently refers to her as his lucky charm. Andy Griffith had not solved the money problem. Ron began delivering newspapers in January 1971. He delivered $200 worth of papers every day before school and made $150 each month. In order to take Cheryl out, he needed money. However, he was involved in a car accident on his way to an audition on April 5, 1971. He had to postpone his next part because to whiplash, holders incurred $3,000 in medical expenses. Unfortunately, he was uninsured. He proceeded to sell his bike for $200. His mobility in subsequent sequences of the film was impaired by the chronic discomfort that he endured for years. Ron never got the recognition he deserved, even after American Graffiti became a huge smash in 1973. With a meager budget of about $777,000, the film grossed $115 million in the US, while Ron received a mere $10,000, no cut of the earnings. He requested 1%, or more than $1 million, from George Lucas. Lucas declined. Thus, their friendship suffered. In 1974, Ron had to accept a $1,000 per episode position on Happy Days in order to have a consistent income. Returning to directing, that show improved his career immensely. Happy Days premiered in January 1974 and featured Ron Howard, who was only 19 years old at the time, playing the role of Richie Cunningham. 11 million people tuned in to watch the first episode when it premiered on January 15th. First, the show centered on Richie's adolescence in Milwaukee in the 1950s. However, things began to shift in 1976. Henry Winkler's portrayal of Fonzie became the showstopper. Instantly, the ratings skyrocketed. With an average of 31 million viewers each week, the show quickly rose to the top spot. In the same year, ABC's upper management devised a novel strategy. In an effort to capitalize on Fonzie's growing reputation, they planned to rebrand the show as Fonzie's Happy Days. More than $1 million was generated by bonsai merchandise in 1976. However, Ron Howard had issues with it. From the start, he had been the center of attention, and now he was being sidelined. An ultimatum was issued to the producers by him in November 1976. He was going to resign if they altered the title. He was prepared to leave even though his contract was valid until 1980. It almost all came crashing down. However, on December 5th, the word got out to Variety magazine, and fans were understandably angry. The volume of letters sent to ABC exceeded 10,000. No one wanted the show's soul to go away. CBS caved. Howard remained and the original title was retained. However, a permanent transformation had occurred. The event was raking in $50 million annually by 1977. Despite this, Winkler was making $75,000 per episode, while Howard didn't even make $25,000. According to an interview Howard gave in 1980, this was a watershed moment. It made him reflect on directing more. Even the set was far from tranquil. At the height of the show's popularity in 1976 and 1977, the actors began bickering over salaries and screen time. The character Potsy's actor, Anson Williams, was earning $12,000 per episode. Half of Ron Howard's income came from that. Anger and jealousy welled up within him. Production on an episode titled The Muckrakers began on November 16, 1976, and Williams allegedly stormed off set during the shoot. The show's creator, Gary Marshall, had written a sequence in Howard's favor. Some others saw it as bias. Nothing was ever confirmed, but suspicions of a physical altercation persisted. ABC attempted to maintain silence in order to safeguard its $50 million machine. In 2012, after all these years, things were already chaotic. The actors, including Williams, sued CBS for $10 million in royalties that had gone unpaid. They stated they were never given a fair portion of the goods. In 1976 alone, sales of Happy Days lunchboxes exceeded 5 million. April 4, 2012 was the date of the settlement. They were each given just $65,000. Williams said that in contrast to the studio's millions, he never even made $100,000 annually. Those incidents nearly destroyed friendships, Howard said in a 2025 interview. Even though he was not a party to the litigation, Howard made his first short film in early 1975 while still playing on Happy Days. The short film, titled Deed of Daring Do, ran for only 10 minutes. While on vacation for 2 weeks in March, he shot it with just $2,000 in his pocket. Comedic cameos from Henry Winkler were also included. On June 15, 1975, the picture had its world premiere at a little festival. Someone allegedly accused him of plagiarizing, but no evidence of this was ever found. The copyright laws of that era were not well defined. Howard was unrelated to any of the other creators who settled for as little as $5,000 in 1976 as a result of a fanfic lawsuit. The request for reshoots by producer Roger Corman on April 20, 1975, was the event that truly shocked him. His budget was nearly wiped out because it cost him an additional $500. On September 10th, the film was nominated for a minor award at the Atlanta Film Festival. In 1977, he was pushed to direct Grand Theft Auto by this small project. The film earned $15 million with a budget of just $600,000. On June 7, 1975, Howard wed Cheryl Alley, his high school love. The Burbank wedding only cost $800. The best man, Henry Winkler, was among the 300 guests. The cost was covered by Cheryl's dad. Despite earning $25,000 per episode, Howard insisted on having a modest wedding. They began their peaceful 2-week vacation in Hawaii on June 8, 1975. Although there is no concrete evidence, speculation circulated in 1977 that tabloids began publishing adultery stories based on leaked private images. Later, in 1978, the rumors reached their peak. The National Enquirer published unfounded allegations of infidelity on October 15th. It was humiliating, according to Howard. He mentioned that a kissing chair, which symbolizes their youthful love, was their 50th anniversary present in an interview from the year 2025. A daring step was made by Ron Howard by July 1980. His departure from Happy Days was imminent. 20 million people watched the show every week, but Howard was hoping for more. To direct TV movies, he approached ABC. They extended an offer of $100,000 for a further 3 years, but he declined. Yes, he declined. His $1 million deal with NBC was finalized on July 20th, 1980. His creative freedom was fully restored by the new contract. On September 9th, 1980, the premiere of Happy Days Season 8, he announced his departure. It stunned the fans. Around 15,000 letters pleading for his return had reached ABC by August. Later on, Howard compared ABC's treatment of him to an eagle stealing a baby. After he left, his first major effort was 1982's Night Shift, which grossed $21 million but was never the same. Without Richie, the ratings fell 30%. With a total of 255 episodes, it continued airing until 1984. Howard directed Grand Theft Auto in 1977, at the tender age of 23. Not only did he co-write it with his dad, Rance, but he also appeared in it. Made $15 million upon its June 16th release, and was a complete surprise. An automobile stunt, however, went horribly wrong while filming. Actor Paul Bartel suffered life-threatening injuries. He suffered internal damage and fractured bones. Howard drew the conclusion of his filmmaking career in the darkest of dreams. Subtly, he resolved the case in 1978. That incident haunted him. For initiatives to come, he prioritized safety. Howard helmed the 1984 film Splash, which premiered on March 9th in theaters. Made $69.8 million after spending $11 million on production. This catapulted Tom Hanks to fame. However, chaos ensued behind the scenes. Script changes were particularly the source of Hanks's rage. Hanks and crew got into a yelling brawl on July 15, 1983, while filming in New York. Howard intervened to prevent an altercation. Studios were on the verge of canceling the picture, but Disney's new Touchstone label salvaged it. An enraged extra called Harold Jenkins threatened Howard's life in 1985 while The Cocoon was filming in Florida. Jenkins, who was terminated on February 12th, issued letters threatening physical harm. He thought the movie was making fun of the old. For $150,000, Fox had to pay for round-the-clock protection. We loosened up the writing and pushed back the release date to June 21st. Despite this, the picture earned $85 million and took home Oscars for visual effects and Donamesh. Willow was released on May 20th, 1988. The concept was proposed by George Lucas in 1972, and Howard oversaw its $35 million budget. Due to heavy advertising and mixed reviews, it managed $137.6 million worldwide, but lost $20 million. Never did Howard and Lucas stop bickering. They had an argument in June 1987 about cuts totaling $5 million. While Howard was on the verge of leaving, home video eventually helped it turn a profit. August 2, 1989 was the release date of Howard's Parenthood. His daughter, who was 4 years old at the time, threw up sushi on him during a tumultuous journey to Australia, which served as inspiration for the piece. Making $126 million, the film had a budget of $20 million. However, Howard was sued by writer Elena Vasquez in May 1989 for allegedly stealing her script. In June, he settled for $500,000. The film's release was nearly halted due to the case. Howard helmed the 1991 firefighter drama Backdraft. Something went wrong with a stunt on July 9, 1990. Fire came out in a big way, and Kurt Russell's face and hand were burned. There were major safety infractions discovered by an OSHA investigation. Moreover, 3 additional crew members sustained burns. If the fire were to turn on them at any moment, Howard added later, they had no idea. Despite this, the film received a nomination for Best Visual Effects and grossed $152 million. The release of Apollo 13 occurred on June 30, 1995. The filming was challenging, but the final product was $355 million. Even down to the exact NASA transcripts, Tom Hanks insisted on accuracy. He was adamant about script revisions on October 12, 1994. All manufacturing ceased on October 15th, resulting in a $2 million loss. October 18th was the day Howard threatened to resign. A member of the NASA personnel had to act as a mediator. In 1996, the picture took home Oscars for sound and editing. Ransom made $309 million upon its 1996 release on November 8th. However, Howard got terrifying threats that were similar to those in the film while filming in early 1996. Someone threatened his children in letters, written on February 14th. His home was searched by the FBI, who also tapped phones and discovered suspicious vehicles in the area. On March 5th, the family was forced to move. The perpetrators escaped from California in April without being apprehended. In retrospect, Howard claimed this was what made the film so deeply personal to him. On November 17, 2000, Jim Carrey's The Grinch was released to the public. Production values were $345 million, but shooting was intense. Every day, Carrey was compelled to endure 2.5 hours of applying makeup. He lost it on March 22nd. Howard and he got into an altercation, and he shoved Howard. Production paused for one day. By April, Carrey had pledged to behave herself better. The effort was rewarded in 2001 when the film took home an Oscar for Best Makeup. Beautiful Mind was released by Howard on December 21, 2001. John Nash's struggle with schizophrenia was chronicled in it. The film won Best Picture and Best Director at the 2002 Academy Awards on March 24th, and it earned $313 million. The set, however, was tight. Russell Crowe exhibited violent episodes. June 10th was the day he tossed a phone at the hotel clerk. Howard went so far as to fire him on April 15th, but he rehired him 2 days later to save $500,000 per day. Howard kept everyone together despite the mayhem, according to Nash's wife, Jennifer Connelly. Ron Howard's 2006 film The Da Vinci Code sparked a global scandal. Many religious communities, notably the Catholic Church, were incensed. Supposedly, a group known as Opus Dei hushed up the fact that Jesus had a child with Magdalene after they were married. This sparked demonstrations in a number of nations. Christians in India wanted it outlawed. Only adults were allowed to watch it in the Philippines. During the Cannes premiere on May 17th, Ron Howard was even threatened with murder and had to employ security due to a bomb fear. During the screening, critics both laughed and booed. Opus Dei pleaded with Sony to include a fiction disclaimer on February 14th, accusing the film of presenting a distorted portrayal of the Church. U.S. Catholic bishops condemned the video as immoral and created a website called JesusDecoded.com. It still managed to earn $760 million globally despite all the uproar. However, Howard did confess afterwards that the ongoing animosity surrounding it was annoying. When filming in Italy without the proper authorization, Howard and author Dan Brown were on the verge of jail, despite the Vatican's warnings that it was anti-Catholic and not to watch. The show's popularity ironically increased viewer interest. While filming Solo, a Star Wars story in 2017, production became chaotic. Creative disagreements with Lucasfilm led to the June firing of original filmmakers Phil Lord and Chris Miller. In order to salvage the film, Ron Howard was brought in. In order to make the strict May 2018 deadline, he had to reshoot around 70% of the picture from late June to mid-October. Because of this, the budget ballooned to $275 million. Howard allegedly destroyed the film by shoring it up with a more traditional Star Wars vibe and removing the exciting, daring approach. Litigation did occur. Some performers, such as Alden Ehrenreich, required assistance in assuming their roles. The release was postponed. Instead of taking director's credits, Lord and Miller opted to be named executive producers. Dissatisfied fans even went as far as to initiate petitions opposing Howard. Disputes broke out on set because, according to several insiders, he disregarded the previous footage. The film's $393 million was still below forecasts, but it was still respectable. Some thought Howard was being too cautious, while others disagreed. Even more difficulties for Ron Howard in 2009 came from Angels and Demons. In an outlandish plot involving the Illuminati and antimatter endangering Rome, the film portrayed the Catholic Church as an adversary. As Howard revealed on May 3rd, his crew had to construct phony versions of churches since the Vatican had surreptitiously forbidden him from filming inside. Even though the movie was eventually deemed innocuous by the Vatican's periodical, he estimated that $50 million in earnings had been lost due to this covert boycott. They initially declined to back it. Following the example of the Da Vinci Code, Archbishop Velasio de Palis cautioned in April that protests might backfire. William Donahue, another prominent Catholic, urged his followers not to boycott but to instead promote the gospel. Because the plot involved murders, some churches even forbade the filming of the scene. Despite this, the film earned $485 million, and Tom Hanks stated that the intention was to provoke interest rather than wrath. The Vatican was noticeably more silent in this video than in the last one. A major lawsuit over the 2014 film The Good Lie was filed against Imagine Entertainment, which is Ron Howard's firm. In 2015, 54 Sudan refugees have spoken out about how the film Without Fair Pay exploited their real-life suffering. Their 101-page lawsuit was filed in Atlanta on February 19th. They claimed that in return for $55,000 and the assurance of assistance, they had divulged tragic tales of famine and evading militias. Reese Witherspoon stars in the film, which premiered on October 3rd, but the refugees claim they didn't see a penny. Bobby Newire and Mike Nagel, two producers, were said to have broken their agreement. Since Howard's squad had raised millions to aid refugees, fans were taken aback. An undisclosed agreement was reached in 2017 to end the litigation. The outcry was significant, but Howard was not specifically identified. Despite grossing just $3.2 million in the US, the film's impact was profound due to the authenticity of the suffering it depicted. In 2013, a horrific accident occurred while shooting Rush. The 1976 Formula One rivalry depicted in the film actually occurred. David Crowder, a stunt driver, was injured while filming a sequence that reproduced Niki Lauda's fiery crash. The automobile crashed on August 1st while filming the flaming accident at Nürburgring, when the suspension gave out. There were uncanny parallels to the actual occurrence. Safety was disregarded, according to Crowder's lawsuit. The matter was resolved through a settlement in 2014. Sean Edwards' tragic death in a car crashed just 18 days after the film's September 27th premiere further exacerbated the situation. Subpoenaed and subjected to rigorous questions regarding possible cost savings in the $38 million budget, Howard was forced to defend himself. With the use of actual crash video of injuries sustained by Los Angeles residents, many felt that the $90 million film glorified danger to an excessive degree. In August of 2025, Bryce Dallas Howard, the daughter of Ron, took a stand in the Nepo baby dispute. She admitted on her Happy, Sad, Confused podcast that she was well aware of the privileges bestowed upon her by Hollywood. That she was born on March 2, 1981. Each of her grandparents, Rance, 1928-2017, her Aunt Jean, 1927-2000, her Uncle Clint, born 1959, and her dad Ron were involved in the family business. Even while Bryce acknowledged that opportunities came effortlessly to her, she emphasized how diligently she worked. On the internet, fans felt conflicted. Others wondered if Ron had aided her in landing gigs, while others lauded her candor. Although Ron never admitted it publicly, Bryce insisted that family privilege was a major factor in her landing jobs. When contrasted with other celebrities who deny any advantage, BuzzFeed lauded her candor in 2025. The fact that Henry Winkler is her godfather is an unexpected element. Jurassic World, in which she starred and directed, grossed over $1.6 billion in 2015. Rance Howard, Ron's dad, died away on November 25, 2017, at the age of 89. Following his West Nile virus illness, he experienced heart failure. Rance, whose real name is Harold Beckenholt, began acting in 1949. He has been in more than 140 films and 177 television series. In a touching tribute published in People, Rance's sons Clint and Ron discussed how their family was profoundly affected by his passion for performing. He was in films such as Nebraska and Chinatown. Rumors circulated that Clint and Ron got into an argument about the will, but no evidence of this ever surfaced. Rather, the evidence suggested that the brothers were quite close. Having Clint as a sibling was so fortunate for Ron that he even tweeted about it. They collaborated on a number of projects, one of which was 1977's Grand Theft Auto. One poignant detail is that Rance persisted in acting right up until the death. Only 3 days before his death, he completed filming for a role. It was on June 7, 2025, when Ron and Cheryl Howard marked 50 years of marriage. They initially crossed paths while attending John Burroughs High School in Burbank, California. On November 1, 1970, they went on their first date. While munching on pizza, they watched It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Ron expressed his gratitude for the challenges they had overcome as a couple on Instagram. Bryce was born in 1981, Paige and Jocelyn were twins in 1985, and Reed was born in 1987. By 2025, they had 6 grandkids. No recent interview has verified rumors that Ron's work obsession nearly led to a divorce in the 1980s. Rather, they appeared more powerful than before. Ron claimed in 2020 that he had never found anyone else. The highlight was when they reenacted their first date in Cheryl's vintage 1970 Volkswagen Bug, and she played the role of the carefree grandma who disregarded all the rules in order to have fun with her grandchildren. Ron Howard's 2011 film The Dilemma, which came out on January 14th, was controversial due to a sentence in it. The character played by Vince Vaughn joked that electric automobiles were gay, not in the gay sense, but in a dumb one. Following the September 2010 suicide of schoolboy Tyler Clemente, GLAAD and Ellen DeGeneres condemned the joke for glorifying bullying. Howard decided to include the joke in the picture, even though Universal removed it from the promos on October 30th. According to him, the joke was fitting for the character, and its removal would be detrimental to the humor. Although he later realized the word could be damaging, he confessed to the BBC in January that he didn't anticipate such a strong reaction. Glad and Anderson Cooper were among the critics who deemed it a harmful insult. Howard stated that he was concerned about sensitivity, but had no desire to restrict narrative. The film made $69.7 million, but the joke was a constant source of disappointment. Ron helmed Netflix's Hillbilly Elegy in 2020. November 24th saw the release of the film adaptation of Jay Songbird's autobiography. Mother was portrayed by Amy Adams. The part of Grandma, played by Glenn Close, earned her a Razzie and an Oscar nomination. There was a budget of $45 million for the film. On Rotten Tomatoes, critics only awarded it a 25% approval rating, while viewers gave it an 82%. When Vance was chosen to be Trump's running mate in 2024, Howard expressed his disbelief to Vulture in August 2025. During their 2018 and 2019 filming, he remarked that Vance appeared mild. Vance had even criticized Trump in 2016 for being repulsive. Howard came clean about sending Vance a cold text message on November 6, 2024, expressing his disappointment while congratulating him. He said the film has its flaws. It was well received by fans despite negative reviews. According to Howard, Vance's shift in values was the most unexpected thing. The Toronto Film Festival on September 7th, Ron's 2025 feature Eden had its world premiere. This film, which previously had the title Origin of the Species, featured Sydney Sweeney, Jude Law, Ana de Armas, Vanessa Kirby, and Daniel Bruhl. It was based on a crazy true story from the Galapagos Islands in the 1920s about murder caused by jealousy and betrayal. Filming commenced on November 27, 2023, with the majority of locations being in Queensland and a few in the Galapagos. It concluded on February 14, 2024. The budget was reduced from $55 million to $35 million as a result of tax concessions in Australia. In an interview that was conducted on August 25th, Howard revealed that the real story caused him anxiety while filming. Based on a true story from 1934, a disturbing scene depicted a woman giving birth all by herself and tragically dying. Opinions were divided, with reviews ranging from absurd to sexy and dark. The film received 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. According to Howard, it serves as a warning about the dangers of being alone, particularly after becoming acquainted with such a person. Howard retained the Baroness and 2 murders from the original case, although he toned them down slightly in the script. For his role in Seth Rogen's 2025 comedy The Studio, Ron received his first acting Emmy nomination. On July 15th, the show received 23 nominations. Episode 3 aired on March 14th and featured Ron playing an outrageous version of himself, who got into an argument and scream battle with Rogen's character. This was his first television role since the 1984 finale of Happy Days. He blamed an incident from 1995 for making him too superstitious to anticipate victory in an interview with People published on September 6th. In the past, Ron put the failure of the paper's box office run, which earned just $48 million off a $30 million budget, on the shoulders of a psychic's prophecy. After 195 years in television, he still hasn't won an award for acting, he said on Instagram. Overall, this was his 14th Emmy nomination. As a producer, he had previously won 3. Howard actually hurt his rib in January 2025 due to the shocking unplanned nature of the episode's battle scenes.